Well, everyone, welcome to the Rotary Club meeting of July 11th, 2022. And I want to acknowledge that for the first time ever, Rotary International has a female president, Jennifer Jones. She hails from just down the road in Windsor, so she's a Canadian. So that makes it doubly nice for us this year to have a female president who's a Canadian. So welcome everyone. And I would now like to ask Malcolm Cox to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, President Rick. Days for Girls Canada Society is a registered Canadian not-for-profit and is a country affiliate with Days for Girls International. Many Rotary districts in Canada, USA, New Zealand, Kenya, and Uganda are supporting this work to provide menstrual products and vital health information for women and girls around the world. Our speaker today is Jillian Johnson. She's the Director and Advocacy Coordinator for the group here in Canada. And her passion for this organization began in 2013 when her daughter-in-law referred her to a magazine about the organization. By January 2014, with 9 members and her family's Christmas charity money, Team London, Ontario started production and Jill's advocacy work began. We'll hear all about this. Please welcome Jillian.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. It's a pleasure. I appreciate meeting more Rotarians as my work with Days for Girls goes on. And because my work is now national as well as my team in London, I'm hearing more and more of work that is being done by Rotary clubs across the country to support Days for Girls local teams at a local level. It's a wonderful partnership we have with Rotary, and I think that we admire each other's work and belief structure and practices and principles and all of those things. So it's a good working arrangement. I want to tell you a little bit about Days for Girls today. I was going to say this morning. My last meeting was where I met Malcolm, and it was a breakfast meeting, and that was early. But anyway, I want to tell you today about Days for Girls, and I know that some of you probably know quite a bit about the organization already, but I would like to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page, and things are changing and growing in our organization at quite a quick rate, and it's something that is delightful to be a part of. Our work making menstrual kits for girls and women who menstruate around the world is such gratifying work, and it's motivating to be with each other. And for the people who do the actual sewing, we're all volunteers. Every single person on my 60 plus team, 60 plus in age and in numbers, although we do have a few young ones and some men actually, so I can't just generalize quite that much, but our team is growing, and so is the whole organization across the country. There are 62 teams now, I think, at last count, and a couple more in training. We work with very, very, very specific rules and regulations about how we sew and what we sew and how long it needs to last, and what materials we're allowed to use. And the structure is set up in such a way that each team is absolutely independent financially. So I, as team leader for London, am responsible for fundraising for my team. And all of the fundraising that we gather goes into materials and products to make kits and to distribute them globally. My team to date, and there are about 60 people on my team at any given time, our big, well, first of all, I'll say we have made 5,005 kits and completed and distributed them. We always have some stored ready to go, but we've distributed 5,005 menstrual kits. And we like to measure our success and our contribution in terms of days for school, because that's what Days for Girls represents. Each kit is represents 180 days of school, because it's washable products that girls and women need when they menstruate, and they are sewn so carefully and with such good quality fabrics that they're guaranteed pretty much with the right care and use, they will last 3 or more years. So that means each one, we always tell the girls, guess what's in here, and they guess all the things that they know are in there, but they never guess that there are 180 days of school in this kit. So what we do with the kits is we, as a team, we add them all up, and we have created and given girls 900,900 days of school. That's a lot of schooling. And the reason that the girls need that is because if they didn't have a kit, they wouldn't go to school. They don't have the equipment they need to manage their menstruation, and they're humiliated, and there's a stigma, and they're considered to be dirty. There are different things in different communities and in different cultures, but basically they're not considered to be acceptable in a classroom situation if they're leaking or if they're smelling. And so there have been some really nasty situations that have created world notice, and people all over the world have started to notice the work of Days for Girls and the work that needs to be done still by other organizations in conjunction with Days for Girls. We all realize, and you'll see in a minute, that a Days for Girls kit is not an ideal solution for every girl who menstruates or every woman who menstruates, especially when we start talking about Canadian people who menstruate. When I do my presentations like this one, they're usually live, and there's usually a question period. And often the first question is, what about Canadians who menstruate? And the solution is this, the answer is that there are kits available for any Canadians who want them. But the truth is that many Canadians are way snagged up and caught up in the disposable kinds of menstrual products, and they're not ready for a change. But that is also changing. More and more people are beginning to change and look to things that are sustainable and things that are good for the environment and things that are washable. And Days for Girls kits are all of those things. Every single thing in this kit is washable. And the girls know that when they see them, and they are delighted to learn that. The girls in Haiti, where I visited, and in where else have I been? Guyana, and my heart is in Kenya, because that was where I did my first demonstrations and distributions. And the distribution, I should tell you too, comes along with an education program that takes probably between an hour and a half. And we keep the girls entertained, but we tell them everything they need to know about menstruation, most of which they knew nothing about before we started. And they are so happy to have that information. And sometimes I told a story on at the last meeting, the last Rotary meeting, about a girl who came back with her mom after a distribution, and her mom was quite fiery-eyed, daughter in one hand and kit in the other, and said, "Who gave this to my daughter?" And Celeste, who had done it, said, "I did." And Celeste Mergens is the founder of Days for Girls International. And Celeste said, "I did." And the mom said, "Thank you, I never knew." And that's the whole thing. The moms learn as much from the girls because they go home and teach them as well. And they learn that one thing that we tell them is no periods, no people. And so we make sure that they understand that every healthy female menstruates, and that it's part of life, and that it's a magic part of life, really, because they're preparing, their bodies are practicing, we tell the little girls, to have babies. And so there's a good educational component. So I thought I'd give you a closer look at the main components of a kit. Inside this kit, there are lots of components, which I'll list for you, but you don't need to see them all. But the main two components are called the shield, which is this, and the liner, which is flannelette. And it has a special layer across the center that makes it very extra absorbent. And you notice we choose fabrics that are stain busters, we call them. They, if there are blood stains after usage, then you don't really notice them too much. It's not as if they're on white or pale pastel colors or anything like that. So the liner is folded a three-fold, like so. And then the shield has pockets in the top and the bottom, and it has snaps on the sides. And so what we do is we put the liner into the top and the bottom, into the pockets. I'll shoot a bit here. And then a bit more wrinkled than I would normally have it. That's basically the look. And then this part fastens around the crotch of the underwear. And when the distribution is the most fun, because the girls love this part. I usually stand on a chair so everyone can see me. And there are 2 pairs of underwear in the kit. And I take 1 pair of underwear and put it around my knees, step in over my pants and step into this pair of underwear. And I show them that you put this contraption in the crotch of the underwear, and then you fasten the dome on the other side of the crotch of the underwear, so that you've got this whole little package sitting neatly inside the underwear. I recently sent 350 kits, I think it was, to South Sudan. And the guy that took them for us is a farmer from the London area. And he's doing an agricultural program in South Sudan. And he took pictures of the girls when they had their distribution. And one of the pictures shows the girls standing in a line, and they're each holding up their underwear, and all of their underwear has this thing in the crotch. So they all practiced, and we knew that they learned how to do them properly. So besides these, there are actually 2 shields in each kit. I wanted to give you a kind of a list because it's a pretty good kit. It's designed to last with 1 laundering through a period. So there are 2 shields, and there are 8 liners. And we also teach the girls that they can put more than 1 liner in if they need to. If they have a heavy flow, they can put in 2 or 3. And speaking of heavy flow, we also make heavy flow kits, which are, as you can see, longer. They're 2.5 inches longer. But the idea is that for someone who's had a baby, or for someone who's in a wheelchair, or someone who just has really heavy flow, or maybe for night use, they have the option of having a longer, more coverage to their kit. So they get in the standard kit, they get 2 of the shields, and they get 8 liners. And they also get a washcloth, and we teach them about the actual hygiene part of menstrual health. And they also get 2 pairs of underwear. And we take 1 of the shields and the liner that's in it. And when they get it, it looks like it did when you first saw it today, so that they understand that this is a way that they can take an extra with them if they think their period might start, just for protection. That's our basic pad. So, and inside too, there is a washable, waterproof bag that they can use for soiled liners during the day. That's this bag. And that's Days for Girls logo. So we've started ordering this directly from a company, and Days for Girls teams all over the world are using this because it's waterproof, but it is fabric. And so they can, during the course of the day, this flips over, as you can probably guess, and they put their soiled things inside. And at the end of the day, they're protected, and they can take them out and give them a good rinse and then a wash. So the kit inside looks like this. It looks all very attractive. You can see the underwear, you can see the little pod that's the extra bit, and the 1 liner is standing up. And then one of the most important parts of the kit is the instructions. And you can see that they don't require any language. It's all very obvious what they're to do, how they're to use them, how they're to care for them. Even the washing is there and hanging on the line to dry for sterile solutions. And on the back is a calendar where they can actually keep track for the first year they have their kit. And this is a brand new thing for them. They've never understood that they could keep track. Some of them, I suppose, have figured out that it's relatively regular, but to have a calendar is a gift, especially to women who are interested in making sure they don't get pregnant and have no access to what we would call birth control, and we're not allowed to use that term in case we're espousing something. Yeah, so the kits are beautiful, and they are the building block of Days for Girls. But times are changing, and our goal was never to make a kit for every girl. Our logo was every girl, everywhere, period, our motto. But we've never really meant that every girl everywhere should have a kit for her period. We've just meant that we want to make sure every girl has menstrual health. And so the next step is that we are supporting, as an organization, Days for Girls, we support enterprises in countries where the kits have been accepted and are successful. And Kenya is probably the best example. The government has stepped in and they've set a washability standard so that any washable kits must meet this standard. And our kits are among the few that do. And so we're working quite closely with governments in Kenya and Uganda, and I think Rwanda is another country, but quite a few anyway, African countries. But we're setting up enterprises there, which means that not only are we making sure that the menstruators in their countries are getting kits, we're making sure that women, and men for that matter, are having employment. They can work in the enterprise. We teach them how to make the kits. We help them access the fabric. We support them until they get going on their own. And then eventually they can make and distribute and earn in the process. They can earn because they are allowed to sell the kits. We are not allowed to sell kits. Our kits are always donated. But if you're in an enterprise working, you get to sell the kits. And so what happens then is that organizations like Rotary, but other generous organizations, can purchase kits from the enterprises. And so if you know someone who's traveling, you can purchase kits from the enterprises, and the enterprise will distribute the kits just the way we would. What it means for people like my team is a big change, because we love counting those days and making those kits. But we must acknowledge that we never planned to make kits forever for every girl. We planned always to teach them. It's like the old teach a man to fish thing. We had planned all along, as part of Days for Girls goals, we planned to teach them to make their own kits. And already in some countries, government is buying kits and supplying them as a government project. And that is ideal, because then the workers get the money, but the people still get free kits. So there are lots of different arrangements that are set up. For my team, we've taken our first step just in the last 2 months. A couple of years ago, we sent kits to Senegal with a group of people who were traveling there just before COVID. And we sent 300 kits with them, and they loved the experience. They were actually there to do eye tests. They were optometrists, but they loved the whole being part of the Days for Girls distribution. And so what happened then was that Senegal developed a really good, very strong enterprise, which means I'm not allowed to send kits there anymore because they can make their own. They're close enough. It's a small country. They're close enough to the areas where the distributions are done. So I had to check with the enterprise, and they told me that, yes, they were very capable of producing 300 kits as long as they could buy them, as long as they could buy the fabrics and the materials for them. So there's an arrangement with Days for Girls International where I buy the kits, theoretically. I buy the kits from the enterprise. I send the money that's needed to buy them to Days for Girls International, and they forward the money to the enterprise. And then the enterprise makes the kits. So when the optometrists get there, they go to the enterprise, they pick up the kits, and one of the people who work there, and they take her with them on their little journey of optometric testing. And she does most of the teaching, but they help with the distribution. So it's a step forward. And for people who donate, it means that not only are you donating to Team London, but you are also and you're making sure that people who need them get kits, but you're also employing especially young women who need the money to raise and feed their family. So it's a step forward for everyone, and we're pretty excited about the way that's going. So the enterprise system is struggling at the moment because of COVID. A lot of supply and demand chains have been broken, and customs duties have skyrocketed, and there are enterprises that are struggling. So I found out that Senegal's enterprise is doing fine. They've been given the green light and the arrangements are all made, but there are other enterprises who are struggling still because of COVID. And as a result, they're not creating new enterprises at the rate they would like to be, but they've decided to shore up the ones that exist. And that's one of the things that I like the most about Days for Girls International. They do everything very intentionally, very specifically. They zero in on what their goals are. And one of the things that Celeste always used to tell us is that she didn't know how to say no. She always said, yes, we can do that. Well, Celeste has stepped aside as CEO of the organization. She still is the founder. She still works with governments in other countries, especially Kenya and Uganda, but and Malawi. And in the meantime, though, a young woman who has been working with Celeste for a long time, and I know her personally, has taken over. And she just said, okay, I'm not going to be that person that always says yes, because it's time with COVID. It's time to rein in and make sure we do things just right. And so things are changing a little bit, but it's for the good. And they always consult with all of us when they do these things. They have amazing communication skills. And it just makes me prouder and prouder to be part of the organization. I think I'm probably as enthusiastic about my organization as you are about yours. Being a volunteer is like no other experience, no other kind of work in the world, right? You get your payment in very different ways from any other payment you've ever had, which is very cool. I wanted to tell you a little, have I got more time?
Yes, yeah? You do.
Okay.
I will put my hand up if you can see me.
Yep.
And at a point in time where I'll sort of do this 4 minutes to sort of, and then we'll save some Q&A time for you.
Okay, that's good. I don't really have much more to say. I just wanted to say, I mean, I could talk for all day about this. You probably have guessed that I talk fast and I talk a lot. So it's my enthusiasm, but it's also information that I'm really happy to share. And I know that Rotarians are generous, and we're certainly very happy, very grateful for the donations that we receive. So the last thing I wanted to actually list in terms of what I wanted to say is my advocacy work, because I did join the board. I've been on the board now for 2 years, all of which has been during COVID. So I've never met personally any of the other board members, but I'm about to, because there's a conference coming up, and we go, all of these things we do at our own experience. All of the Days for Girls money at all levels in Canada is volunteer money. And so we are very cautious about how it's spent, and the CRA watches us very closely. So anyway, but my job with the board is that I'm the advocacy coordinator, which has been so exciting, because it means that I talk with people from other organizations in Canada who care about menstrual health. And we do really interesting things to work together. And very recently, the government has decided that they will have, it's called a menstrual equity fund, and they have set aside $25 million over 2 years to establish a fund whereby people in Canada who need help with menstrual products and menstrual health management will have access. And so that would be people in group homes, people in shelters, people who are, what are we calling them? We're calling them not houseless. What's the word?
Homeless?
No, we're not allowed to call them homeless anymore. We call them, oh, what's the word? There's a brand new word, and I should know this. Maybe I'll think of it by the end. Anyway, we're just trying to make it a more positive word, I think. Anyway, it also covers women in prison, people who are in disadvantaged places, and especially Indigenous communities and places like that. So the government wants to take care of those people. And the best part is they have decided to ask organizations who do the work for help and advice. And they've already started the consultation process. And I have been one of the organizations that they have already consulted, and they have indicated that the consultation process will continue all through the summer. So it's been really wonderful to finally feel, as an advocacy coordinator, that I actually have the ears of someone who is in the government, and she is wonderful. She's just it's the Department of Gender Equity, Women, the Ministry of Women, Gender Equity, and Youth, I think. And anyway, it's a wonderful feeling to think that somebody, your word is not falling on deaf ears, and they're getting back to us. They've sent us back more information, and they've let us know each other. And most of the organizations that have been consulted are organizations that I'm already talking to on a regular basis. So it's been really fun, because we've been talking about forming a coalition to actually get more attention to the need for menstrual equity right here in Canada. And I love it because it comes back to that question that happened at the end of every time I spoke to a church group or a Rotary group or anybody: what about the people in Canada who have this need. So it's nice. It's nice to think that we're making some progress as a nation, which is good. So are there questions?
If you have a question, can you use the raise hand function in the reactions part of your Zoom, or just raise your hand, but I'll need to see you on the video if you're going to, because we got a lot of people that have shut their video down. Harry.
Yeah, hi, Jillian. Do you want to tell the folks a little bit about the London South Rotary Club project?
The London South Rotary Club has been our friend for some years now. They have started a really specific program that came out of their introduction to Days for Girls. And I don't want to take more credit than is due to Days for Girls, but I do know there is a strong connection. So I will proceed on that manner, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. What happened was that through one of their members, one of the London South members, met someone from Kenya on some sort of a chat group. And this person was a young woman, very concerned about menstrual health, but also had just concern in general for her little community in Kenya. And Joan, the person from the Rotary Club, told her about Days for Girls, and she looked it up and she was gung-ho to start a Days for Girls enterprise. But the problem was they have no clean water. And without clean water, this becomes disposable. You cannot possibly use a Days for Girls kit if you don't have clean water. So this young woman, with the help of the Rotary Club, big time, has instituted a clean water program for her village. And they're passing the standards, and they're getting acknowledgement that yes, they can go ahead. And so they've taken the first step with the help of that Rotary Club. They are actually buying kits from a nearby enterprise. Kenya has lots of enterprises. So they're buying kits from an enterprise and then distributing them to, and she specifically wanted them for the girls in the school, which I think was 320 girls or something like that. So that dream is coming true, but it's just the beginning. And the fact that they've been successful with this water project shows that it is possible. And as soon as they know that fresh water is possible, more and more communities, it's affordable, this particular project, and more communities will be able to, with help, will be able to do it. And it is sustainable. So it's not something that's going to fall apart like some of the wells that are put in with parts that cannot be replaced in the countries, and that sort of thing. So I think that pretty much sums it up. In the meantime, those same Rotary people, I've got one guy, some of you might know Jim from the Rotary Club. He does laundry for us because we have to wash all our fabric before we sew to get all the sizing out of it and get all the shrinkage taken care of so that everything is pristine and perfect when they receive the kit. And he always says, call me when you have laundry. And he takes it and he brings it back all washed, dried, and ironed, ready for us to sew. So it's pretty wonderful. And then when we have a packing night where we're putting everything together, if there's no COVID and we're not afraid of getting together, they come and they help us put kits together, some of them. So we've had some really personal experience with them. And we certainly, as I said, we appreciate the donations that we get. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, the water water component is using solar disinfection. So as Jillian mentioned, you're not relying on a well and a pump and electricity and parts and everything. They're actually using the sun to disinfect the water, which then gets used not just for the kits, but for all their water needs. So yeah, it's a pretty cool project.
Right.
Any other questions? Well, I
have one more, Rick.
Go ahead, Harry.
A while ago, Jillian, I know Kathleen and we bought a package of cards that we used as hostess gifts. So when you're visiting somebody else and you do not want to bring yet another plant or a bottle of wine or whatever, what we've done is we've said, here's our hostess gift. And Jillian, I'll turn it back over to you to explain it.
Oh, I guess I should put it right. Well, it is right. It's right side up. Okay, so this is an idea that came from a close friend of mine, actually. She said to me, when she doesn't live close enough to actually sew with us, but she said, I really would like to give something to each of my grandchildren's teachers as their end of the year gift. And I'd like it to be a donation to Days for Girls. Can we figure out a way to do that? So she designed the first gift card. Since then, the idea has taken off, and we use them, especially around Christmas. We start maybe mid-October, and anybody who would like to buy a gift for that person who has everything. The way it works is that let's just say that I wanted to give Malcolm this present. It would say, to Malcolm from Jill, but then it says, instead of giving you a present, Malcolm, I'm making sure that a girl in some country or other gets a menstrual kit from Days for Girls, London, Ontario. And so it's a fundraiser specifically for my team. It has taken over in such a way that I took it to the last conference, which was in Toronto pre-COVID. And we were asked to give hints about things that were working for us, not just fundraising, but anyway, I showed them one kit, and now quite a lot of the clubs are doing this, but more importantly, Days for Girls International has taken it on, and they're doing it as well. So it's become a really nice way, because people like the idea. At Christmas time, we put a little hole in the corner and hang them on a Christmas tree, and we'll be at some function or other, and people can get one off the Christmas tree. And it's just, I don't know, they're just nice ways to incorporate the giving into whatever it is you're doing. And there's a picture of the kit, as you can see. Those are all the contents of the kit at the bottom corner, and on the back it very clearly shows that it's a London thing. But yeah, it's a really nice thing to give, for a lot of occasions. It could be Valentine's or some specific occasion, but it can also ideal for a hostess gift. I hadn't heard that used. Thank you. That's good. I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a rule where we ask our guest speakers not to ask for money, but since I broke the rule as Sergeant at Arms, I will fine myself later.
Okay.
I think unless there's anybody else, I'll maybe have the sort of final question or area for you to discuss, Jillian, and that is, I'm interested in Canada as to, we've seen TV advertising of late about menstrual health and education and all of that. How do you get to that market of need in that? And is there an economic aspect to this, that it's people with lower income thresholds that are experiencing this more than other for their young daughters, and that? I'm just interested in that generally. I myself probably would not be approached on the subject, but my wife might be, or something like that.
Yeah, that's a very big question. And just to start at the end, it's very typical for men to not feel super comfortable about talking about this topic, but it is also changing big time. And so I think it's changing internationally. I can tell some very funny stories about about young men in Kenya who came to me quietly and said, I do talk to my wife about her period, things like that. But it still is difficult to talk about a period. And especially even in my age group, there are still a lot of women who find it hard to talk about it. Although once they get involved with Days for Girls, they no longer do, because they see how natural. And, we always say to those men, you wouldn't be here if your mother didn't have a period, So yes, but a lot of the stigma has to do with just menstruation in general. And the fact is that women who have the funding and the economic ability to do so can avoid the stigma. They can go and buy the fancy new underwear that is available, where you just wear the underwear, and it's special period underwear, and somehow the crotch just magically absorbs everything, and the underwear costs $50 a pair. And that's the problem gone for somebody who can afford it. However, there aren't very many people who can afford that. And so it does come down to your socioeconomic level. And there are women who just, and girls who just cannot afford products. And then it gets to be contentious, because you probably heard that we had an announcement from the Ontario government a while back that they were going to supply product. Well, what they did is they signed a contract with Always. And so that means that Always, that's not me, is it? Oh, I hear somebody's phone ring. Anyway, that the contract means that every girl who goes to high school in Ontario, unless she's on a reservation, is going to get free product, but the free product is going to be Always. It's going to be assigned, which is a gigantic commercial thing. And it means that somebody is getting monopoly in terms of the business end of things. And it means that the people who are needing the products are not getting any choice or preferences respected. And it also means that the people on the reservation lands needed to be, the federal government jumped in to bail them out because they weren't included. And so there were a lot of things that weren't considered during that time, which is why we're so pleased that the federal government is consulting us now, because we know these things. We know, with the knowledge of the organizations that do this work, we know the foibles and we know the important things that need to be looked after. And so hopefully we'll be able to look after the problem, but it still remains at least a two-part problem. First of all, you've got the money, but secondly, you've got the stigma. And for the stigma affects every single woman who menstruates, everyone, whether there's someone who has said, oh, she must be on her period because she's grouchy that day, or, oh my God, she's leaking, you know. It's not something that, you know, that any of us would choose, but it's something that men are coming to terms with. And the fact that men are coming to terms with it is really, really important, because that is going to help the stigma more than anything else.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Jillian, to thank you for your most informative presentation today to our club. And in recognition of your presentation, the Rotary Club of London has made a contribution to the Polio Plus campaign of the Rotary Foundation to immunize 50 infants against polio. Because of you, Rotary is one step closer to a polio-free world.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much. That's an honor.
Before we get into the announcement that's posted there, I want to make an announcement. I'm announcing to the club today that we have filled a very important chair role in our club. Don Stevens, a longstanding member and past president, has agreed to accept the very significant role of local community services committee chair. It's going to be a very critical role this year as we look for areas of projects and in the community. Since we haven't had any most recently, we're done the one we did have in that. So I really appreciate that. And Don would like to make a few comments to our membership here.
Thank you very much, Rick. Just a few things. First, the committee is looking for new members. So any Rotarian that would like to join our committee, please give me a call. We look to be very productive and underway by September. Secondly, we're looking for new projects. So any Rotarian that's aware of a community need or a community opportunity that we may want to consider, please forward it to myself and we will start the consideration. The board has given us areas of emphasis that we want to follow. We want to run one big project maybe over 3 years and maybe 2 or 3 smaller projects each year, hopefully with some hands-on sweat energy involved in those projects. So I'm going to phone a few people and talk to them about their ideas. A few have already sent me their ideas and we're underway. So thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you, Don. Are there any other announcements?
Members of the club on June the 28th staffed a bingo. Bingo is an important fundraiser for the club, bringing in $8,000 to $10,000 a year in kind of normal times. So on June the 28th, Randy Harden, Jerry Purvel, Jim Swan, and myself were at the Forest City Bingo, and we contributed $6,020 to the community pot that's shared up on a quarterly basis to our club. Secondly, on the 29th, this is the second time we've done it, working in conjunction with Rotarians from the Grand Bend Rotary Club who have collected up a lot of surplus PPE. We distributed, myself and Randy Harden, on the following day, the 29th, distributed a number of loads to doctors' offices. So this material that is surplus from the school boards in the north does not go into landfill sites. Good feeling all around there that we diverted a lot of discarded school board PPE items. And depending on how that may come into the Rotary Club of Grand Bend in the north, we may be doing that again, so stay tuned. That's it.
Thank you, Keith, and thanks to the bingo group. You do great work. Okay, as a reminder, our next Rotary meeting is next week, Monday, July the 18th. Dinner at the Highland Golf and Country Club, registration at 5:30, half hour for fellowship, and we will have the dinner started to be served right at 6 p.m. And I want you all to imagine what the Rotary Club of London can do in the next year. This meeting is adjourned.